As you can see, I grew up with technology already at my disposal. Not that my parents enjoyed a 3-year-old messing around with their brand new computer back in '97. Ever since then, I have seemed to be hooked on anything that runs on electricity, from phones, video games, TVs, even computers. I could go on all day about things I have taken apart and tried to put back together in working order. This is the type of kid who needs to go to Turning Point Learning Center. Hello, my name is Colby Ratzlaff, I'm 15 years old, and this is my education story. When I went to the regular, traditional schools before Turning Point opened up in Emporia, Kansas, they had a gifted program for students looking for a little more to do in class. The gifted program was for kids who finished their work on time or were bored with the work they were given because it was too easy for them. The gifted program was a 30-minute session once a week. And not only that, it was in a room about the size of a closet. I mean, it felt good to be able to get out of the classroom for a little while, but what are you supposed to do with 30 minutes? I had a lot of friends before going to Turning Point Learning Center, and you might think that I lost all of them when I went to TPLC, but it didn't change over these past 4 years. When my mom heard from one of my friends that there was a different type of school opening up in our town, she was delighted, so to speak. Let's just say my mom did not want me to attend the 5th and 6th grade because of the things she'd heard, such as bullying issues, fighting, and the academic structure. We went to the school's interview session, and everything went well. When the first day started, in August of 2006, I did not know anybody else in the school. In fact, there was only 16 students and one teacher, Ginger Lumen. Everyone got a laptop that was theirs for the entire school year. What was cool about this for me, being a 5th grader, was setting up an instant messaging account. I wanted to be able to talk to the other kids while I was at home or even at school and I couldn't get up and go talk to them in class. Problem was, I had not done much typing before coming to TPLC. I was about the slowest PEC typer you could find. What made it worse, though, was the fact that I had a low spelling and reading level prior to attending TPLC. People told me when I chatted them, they couldn't understand what I was saying and that everything was jumbled up. The good experience for me my 5th grade year was being able to help other students with anything dealing in technology. This gave me a chance to socialize on a different level and work with people as a leader. I will tell you though, when you love technology and love to experiment with different things, don't do it 2 weeks before your quarter work is due. This is what happened to me when all I wanted to do was mess around with Ubuntu and ended up wiping my hard drive. So when my 6th grade year started, I was already a little wiser, which is kind of a given. Our student count had dropped to 11 since apparently we didn't know we had to recruit new students. But it felt very much like a family gathering every day. My 6th grade year was much more exciting than my 5th because we had many more of what we called hands-on projects. One of the earliest we did was also the biggest, physically. This is the room-size cell, as we called it. The cell was student-made and student-presented. It was large sheets of plastic cut and taped together to form a 3D oval shape. When a fan was turned on to feed the air to the inside, it would inflate. The students researched and made all the organelles that were found in each cell in your body. I have to tell you, it looked pretty amazing. Better yet, we had to know all the parts inside and out and how they function together because we would be taking the cell to other schools around town and teaching younger students about science. They had to be 4 feet tall and all the bones had to be of proper proportions, so we got to learn a little bit about ratios as we measured our own bones, took class averages. But just then, luckily for us, we had a kid move to the school that fit the descriptions for this project. It made measuring things out a little easier. Other than giving us instructions and advice about building when we needed it, this was all our teacher did for the project. The students were in charge of doing everything else. We had to know the bones and take a quiz on them, and we had to build and construct the skeleton out of given materials. In the end, we found out that the pelvis is a very strong bone, and not to build your replica pelvis out of styrofoam.
There's the front of our school. map temp. And let me know if the textures are right. Are the textures right? They're not?
My 6th grade year was also the same year our teacher started really having us use wikis and all the good things you can do with them. We made about 10 different wikis in that one year. They were good because it let as many people work on it as you had in your group. So unlike my traditional school days, when one person would sit at the computer and do the work while the rest sat around him and watched, the whole group can be contributing at the same time. This even let schools communicate with each other and put information up at the same time, which was nice because it let students from one state work with students in another. For one project, we created our Campaign Trail Collaboration Wiki, where we followed the various presidential candidates through preliminaries and caucuses, Super Tuesday, and finally to the election of President Obama in November of my 7th grade year. We worked with schools from Utah, hello to Jethro Jones, across Kansas, to Connecticut, and even France. Hello, Mr. Mespoulet. We even hosted an online debate with an 8th grade social studies class in Wallingford, Connecticut. Hello, Mr. Bogus, where we in Kansas took on the traditional liberal position and they took on the conservative position for the campaign platforms that year. Each class had a Ustream account and we embedded them side by side on the live page of the wiki. Since my teacher, Mrs. Lumen, was learning with us that year, we started to get the hang of things when my 7th grade year rolled around. We started my 7th grade year with a bang. We had more than twice the number of students as last year. We'd expanded up to 28. This was a huge change and things started to function differently. It did not feel as much of a family anymore. But with that loss came many other good positive things. We had bigger projects and an additional teacher. This was the year we did some different and even more interesting hands-on projects. We're getting a hang of how to do these hands-on projects properly, with less confusion on how things should be done. We had 2 major science projects this year, solar and lunar eclipses and oil booms. Our teacher had a giant light bulb that she used to simulate the sun, and we created pinhole cameras to view various eclipses as other students used a sphere to model the sun or moon. That was pretty impressive. The oil boom project was centered around the concept of learning fluid densities and viscosity. Students used hydrometers to find the difference between different types of fluids. This was to answer the question of why oil floats on top of water. After learning this, students were put into groups to see who could figure out the most effective way to collect oil off the surface of the water. Many of the students went for the most simple designs they could think of, but then later ran into problems because they did not plan ahead. I found out later that Mr. Mahoney, our teacher, had predicted these troubles, but didn't warn us about them, so we could learn to solve our own problems. This is the kind of freedom Turning Point Learning Center gives students when learning.
What? Time to wake up! Turning Point students are practicing for the real world and real life right now, using the life practice model and real tools of today. In developing the life practice model, we believe that learning should occur at any time and place, and that active learning engages the tools of today to excite kids' amazing minds. Using Google's free tools, $10,000, and their own designs, middle schoolers redesigned their rooms to make them less schooly. They shot before views, created plans, and then rendered their final designs. The life practice model allows learners to take charge.
Colby is working on her sketch. He's doing very well. Alicia is planning out a theme and design. and then I'm preparing for the conference.
This summer, students are buying supplies to bring their plans to life. Dynamic, relevant, and innovative.
You should know that when our school started, we were given the most basic and leftover furniture the school district had. It worked for a while until it started to come loose, despite the fact we kept screwing and gluing things together and everything was mismatched. Finally, we were able to secure $10,000 from the district for new furniture, but instead of the teachers deciding what to buy with it, they made it into a project and competition to redesign our entire environment. Teachers picked 5 students as leaders, and they got special leadership training and advice while the other students filled out resumes and applications for jobs. The students applied to the leaders for jobs such as accountant, to manage the $10,000 budget, interior designer, tech support, and documentarian. Once the leaders had negotiated which teams they would have, the work began. Teams were told by the CEO and CFO, actually the teachers, that they had to create an entire plan on what they would do with the money if they won, which meant they needed to have a list of furniture, where it would be coming from, the cost of the furniture, how to order it, and how it was going to get here. On top of that, they needed to take inventory on the good furniture we already had. We also had to create before and after views, which included a 3D Google SketchUp design of the finished rooms, including paint and furniture. The next step of the project was measuring and designing. In order to create the designs in Google SketchUp, we need to know the precise measurements of all the rooms, bookshelves, tables, and chairs. This was hard for some of the groups, but being a somewhat friendly competition, others were willing to assist them. We knew that we would all win if one of the teams created an acceptable plan. This was one of my favorite projects because it gave me a chance to do what I love, designing in 3D. The primary tool for this project was Google SketchUp, which I've been working with for 3 years now. Now is my chance to show everybody what I was capable of, and it sure showed come presentation time. My 8th grade year at Turning Point Learning Center would prove to be the most exciting of them all. We had more projects this year than ever. We had 54 kids, almost doubled from last year, and almost quadrupled from 2 years previous. The school now had 4 teachers, 1 for every core subject. When you have a teacher for each class, you can have more hands-on projects. Relating to the big project of last year and my very first year, I would attempt to redesign the front of Turning Point Learning Center in 3D. I had more SketchUp experience than ever, and I knew how to add more detail into my projects. I also knew how to do accurate measuring without spending the time and hassle of doing it by hand. I found out that Google Maps allows you to measure just about anything that you want with the pin tool. I measured the length of the school with that, and then double-checked with my room measurements put together in SketchUp, and they both came out the same. Once I had acquired all the dimensions, I took pictures of the front of the school, making sure I captured all the small details. Then, I started to do the basic layout of the school front and rendered the model with a graphics application. When the results came out, it looked like a clay model. Next, I started on the details, beginning simple until I needed to make sure all of the things I was doing matched the actual building. I made sure I kept copies of this project in different places in case something would happen to the computer. When all the details were finished, I began working on textures. I searched several sites for textures which closely matched the school. I rendered these final models and was very happy with the results, but there was something missing. I noticed I needed to add a sky and grass into the mix. This would give it the realism I was looking for. This was absolutely my favorite project, and it was an independent study, but we still had many more projects during my 8th grade year that are worth mentioning. We got a licensed science teacher this year, and she had one big project in mind before winter got here. We built cold frames from old wood and repurposed windows. These cold frames allow plants to grow when the weather is too cold. The garden was student designed and the land hand prepared. We had to maintain the garden and keep the weeds out. The students need to remember when to water the plants. We harvested in February after several snows and enjoyed lettuce, spinach, and some tiny radishes in our first salad. When the weather started to warm up a bit, we took out the cold frames and started our summer garden, which was harvested this summer. Other projects are memorable from that year, including Skyping with a local high school and adult mentors as we read The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. We took many hike-its around town, shared food tasting with Mr. Fladd's class in Deerfield, New Hampshire. We also learned a lot about the state of our world from Global Nomads video conferencing during my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years, connecting with students across the world in Bermuda, Haiti, Egypt, Canada, and with many inside the U.S. Turning Point Learning Center is different than traditional school because it allows students to learn in a more dynamic way than ever would have been possible in traditional schooly school. We were able to work hands-on with technology because every student has a laptop. This is a very powerful learning tool that allows us to learn from experts anywhere in the world and publish our own learning, sharing it with others. Also, project-based learning is one of the many things that made Turning Point Learning Center better than any other school. If you give students a challenge to learn a topic with a project that goes along with it, then they are much more likely to remember the information, details, and the big picture. We had to learn to manage our own time by creating smaller projects to go with major ideas. I really liked the technology-based student-centered learning. We learned and taught each other, including the teachers. None of us knew everything, but we shared everything we learned. Using technology has improved my ability to learn because I can learn from the most recent sources instead of those old, outdated textbooks. Plus, there are many more sources available online, and everything I would ever want to know is available at my fingertips. In fact, one of the first activities that I did at my new high school is where the teachers sent the kids on a library scavenger hunt to learn how to use the library and its resources. But what if the library is closed? What if all the kids want the same book? What if the book gets lost or stolen? What if the library can no longer afford to carry a magazine? Incidentally, I was able to complete most of the scavenger hunt by looking up the information online and not even going into the library. I know, it wasn't the point, but maybe there's a point to be made. Using technology has allowed us to knock down the walls. We can communicate and interact with people around us. We can ask for expert help. We can meet with other students to solve our own problems, and it creates a different kind of social interaction. At TPLC, we use video conferencing to talk to the world, including Egypt, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, Canada, Australia, Haiti, and we've connected to many places inside the U.S. during my 4 years here too, such as Utah, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Massachusetts, Washington, Illinois, Alabama, Texas, and even New York. Now that's learning outside the four walls of school. Going from TPLC's life practice model back to a traditional schooly school, I've been able to easily connect with my friends. I've been able to make friends across all sorts of social groups. Note-taking with paper is no problem at all, and I'm back in the honors classes. But some parts are tougher. For instance, the biology teacher told my parents that we'll spend 3/4 of the year prepping for the state assessments. Then, in the last quarter, we'll do something else. I believe that by attending Turning Point Learning Center, I can have extra skills needed to excel in life beyond school. TPLC really allowed me to be more engaged and interactive in my own learning. There, I felt like a whole different me in school.